Hey everyone, Tankenstein here. In this video, I'll be reviewing the NF-5A. This is a currently 10.7 BR in air RB and 10.3 BR in ground RB, rank 7 premium fighter in the French air tech tree, though of course flies under the flag of the Netherlands. The pack that it comes in currently costs $69.99 USD when not on sale, and comes with 2,500 Golden Eagles and 20 days of premium time. With that said, in this video, I'll be going over everything that you need to know about this fighter, including its stats, how it plays, I'll give its strengths and weaknesses, I'll give it some scores in several key areas, and then I'll give my final recommendation on if I feel that this vehicle is worth purchasing or not. With that said, if you like this kind of video, please consider subscribing to my channel as it means a ton to me, but without further ado, let's get into the review. Now to start, I'll place its stat card here on the side of the screen. Important things to know are its armament, its turn time, and its countermeasures. Now for how it plays. The NF-5A is essentially the F-5C and F-5A, but better in almost every important and measurable way. It features two Orenda J85 engines with around 15% more thrust than what is seen on the F5A and C models, which allows for about a 20 meter per second better rate of climb, over a 250 km per hour boost to top speed, and better turn sustainability. Further, instead of lesser missiles such as the AIM-9E, the NF5A features the AIM-9J and AIM-9N. The AIM-9N is essentially an AIM-9J with an improved seeker. Being that the AIM-9J is itself an upgrade over the AIM-9E, this makes the NF5A somewhat noticeably more capable in terms of missile combat compared to the F-5C of the Americans. Additionally, the NF-5A has 30 large caliber countermeasures added to the airframe, for a total of 90 countermeasures. It also, in theory, is supposed to have a better radar warning receiver too, but this doesn't seem to be the case in-game. If it is, the NF-5A's RWR is not a huge improvement, at least from my perspective, compared to the F-5A's and C's. There's also the fact that the NF-5A features M39A3 20mm cannons compared to other freedom fighters getting the M39A2, which is supposed to equate to lighter guns in the NF-5A, but this doesn't seem to be reflected in War Thunder. Additionally, it does have vents near the sides of the engines that are not shown on other F5s. Interestingly, the NF-5A is actually an exported CF5, which itself is a license-built Canadian F5 freedom fighter. These largely important points aside, the NF-5A freedom fighter still flies like an F-5C or F-5A, although it is noticeably quicker and has much better missiles. This means that the NF-5A is quick, turns very well, and has excellent combat endurance between its good fuel load, fuel-efficient engines, good amount of cannon ammo, and good amount of countermeasures. This all means that, along with the fact that the NF-5A lacks radar, it is essentially a pure turning fighter that specializes in close-range combat, almost like an American MiG-21. The NF-5A can easily get into excellent position near or behind an enemy to launch its AIM-9Ns, or better yet, just gun an enemy out of the sky with its 20mm cannons, which is fairly easy due to their accuracy and propensity of the NF-5A to outturn pretty much anyone. This excellent turning capability is boosted by the more powerful engines present on this vehicle, which allows for excellent sustain and better ability to come out of the turns with some speed. These capabilities allowed me to have a 9-kill match in air RB with this vehicle, which is crazy because the ending of the match had me up against 3 or 4 enemies by myself, and I still came out on top. I don't think that there was any other fighter that I could have done that with in-game, at least not as easily as it felt with the NF-5A. Basically though, the trick with this aircraft, as well as the F-5A and the F-5C, is to stay low, get close to the enemy, and target those enemies that are either nearby or are distracted, as you can get in close to them and completely outmaneuver them in ways that most other planes could only dream of. I would avoid flying high at the start of the match due to the presence of enemy radar guided missiles and your own lack therein. It's important to know also that the NF-5A, like most other F5 variants, only has provisions for up to 2 missiles, which means that you need to make each of them count, and will force you to get up close to use your guns more often than you might want. Now for base bombing, I would advise to avoid it unless the match is largely over and you change your loadout after landing back at base. But if you do decide to do that, equipping 5 incendiary bombs will allow you to destroy 2.5 bases, which is excellent, especially considering the small size of the freedom fighter. Now for close air support, the NF-5A is quite a bit more mundane, if not a bit mediocre. This is due to the fact that it totally lacks guided weapons of any kind, not even including the manually guided AGM-12 bullpups found on other F5s, but also for the fact that it totally lacks ballistics computers, which is a big deal with this BR. Even with those issues aside, the NF-5A still has a somewhat good anti-ground loadout, largely due to the total size of its loadout and the effectiveness of its weapons. It can carry a single 2,000-pound bomb, up to 3 1,000-pound bombs, up to 18 250-pound bombs, an assortment of 500-pounders, 700-pounders, as well as up to 76 Mighty Mouse rockets and up to to 8 Zunis. Long range and more modern SPAA will chew the NF-5A up if it's not careful. In total though, the ordnance load is pretty good, but it lacks longer range guided options and the ability to have ballistic computers help to aim your weaponry, which even impacts my performance with it, and I've been playing this game since before tanks were even in War Thunder. Now with all that said, let's get into its strengths and weaknesses, and first for its strengths. This vehicle is extremely maneuverable, being able to turn with even MiG-21s. Second, it has a great roll rate. Third, while not amazing, the engines are fairly good, offering around 15% more thrust than the engines on the comparable F-5C and F-5A, leading to fairly good acceleration, rate of climb, and a much better top speed. For its fourth strength, it can carry up to 90 countermeasures, with 30 of those being the more effective large caliber countermeasures. Fifth, while not amazing, the AIM-9Ns are fairly capable in terms of tracking and maneuverability, as they are essentially AIM-9Js with an improved seeker. For its sixth strength, it has two fairly versatile and good 20mm cannons that can destroy both air targets and lightly armored ground targets somewhat well. For its seventh strength, while nothing extraordinary, the anti-ground ordnance carried by the NF-5A is quite good, even if it is all short-ranged and unguided. Better is that it can carry over 2,600 kilograms of ordnance, which is quite good for a small maneuverable fighter. The total that can be carried is over 7,250 kilograms, so who knows if Gaijin will ever give it the weapons to even get close to maxing it out. Beyond this is a relatively small vehicle, which makes it a bit more difficult to hit, especially with guns. And of course, finally, it has premium RP and SL bonuses. Now for its weaknesses. This vehicle lacks a radar. Second, it totally lacks any sort of guided anti-ground ordnance. For its third weakness, it totally lacks ballistic computers for both bombs and rockets, which is crazy at this BR. And finally, it can carry only 2 air-to-air missiles, which is poor for a fighter at this BR. Now with all that said, let's get into how I score this vehicle. And first, for dogfighting and air RB, I give it an 8.75 out of 10. The NF-5A, while seeming like a somewhat decent though not huge upgrade over the F-5A and C, ends up being a much more complete aircraft thanks to all of the improved parts that make it up. While it only has 2 missiles and their rear aspect only, the AIM-9Ns are very good and track quite well, especially against enemies that you maneuver behind and they aren't even aware that you're there. Speaking of, the maneuverability of this plane is fantastic and is helped tremendously by the improved engines, as they allow for better turning speeds and more sustainable turns. This turning also allows for easy use of your cannons when shooting down enemies. Add in 90 total countermeasures, of which 30 are the more effective large caliber countermeasures, and you have easily among the best close range fighters at this BR, outdoing the F-5A and C with ease. The NF-5A is not without some substantial faults, however, as it only carries 2 missiles and they aren't amazing. Further, the Freedom Fighter lacks both a radar and radar guided missiles, which truthfully really isn't all too big of a deal at this BR, but it is worth mentioning. Otherwise, the NF-5A is at 10.7 BR fantastic. If it saw a BR increase to match the F-5E variants in game, the NF-5A would automatically be worse than most of them. But I don't know if or when that would ever happen. For now though, the NF-5A is possibly the best close range fighter at its BR, though it's questionable if it's the best overall fighter due to its aforementioned faults. Now for close air support, I give it a 3.5 out of 10. While not awful, the close air support capabilities of this aircraft are fairly poor. This isn't due to what it can carry, as its weapons are quite good for what they are, and it can carry a good amount of them, but it's more so about what the NF-5A lacks, namely any sort of guided weapons and ballistics computers. Heck, even if the loadout was slightly lighter on this vehicle and it had a ballistics computer, it would see a decently higher score for me in this category. It just lacks things that would allow it to be either more accurate or, better yet, stay somewhat safe against more modern SPAA. While the NF-5A can still do tremendous damage to enemy ground forces with its current loadout, it needs to get close enough to see their ugly faces. And that just is not a winning strategy at this BR, at least not if the enemy has any sort of reasonable anti-air defense. It just isn't consistent enough to be successful. Those successes can definitely happen while playing the NF-5A in a close air support role. Now with that said, overall, I give it a 7.25 out of 10. I'm weighing dogfighting much more than with close air support for its overall score, as the NF-5A is a fighter first and foremost, with CAS as a distant second. With this said, even with the mediocrity of its close air support capabilities, the NF-5A is still fantastic overall, as it can at least perform CAS decently well if you're a little careful and a bit lucky. Otherwise, the capabilities as a fighter with the NF-5A are phenomenal at this BR, and land it squarely among the best fighters currently in game in the brackets in which it will typically play. It won't hold your hand and will require you to be at least somewhat capable with cannons and turn fighting, but if you can nail that, the NF-5A can be an excellent fighter and a deficient, though in some ways somewhat sufficient, CAS aircraft. Now with that said, do I recommend the NF-5A for purchase? performance. Yes, 100% if you want an amazing fighter with a usable but still mediocre close air support capability, though I will always say to wait until it's discounted because $69.99 USD is too much to pay for anything other than an invulnerable vehicle. With that said, you won't get much better for a close range fighter at this BR than with the NF-5A, as it turns better than and has better performance than its F-5C and F-5A counterparts, while also having better missiles and more and also better countermeasures. In effect, the NF-5A is just better than those vehicles, which means that it's among the best fighters at and around this BR, though of course not without its aforementioned flaws. Only being able to carry 2 missiles and not being among the fastest planes at this BR can be a bit of a bummer, but if you use all the strengths of the NF-5A, it'll be an absolute beast. Again, it will not hold your hand, so inexperienced players may have difficulty adjusting to it, but even still, it'll do more than the aforementioned lesser Freedom Fighter variants. In all, this is an amazing fighter with usable but mediocre close air support capabilities. As such, I give it my full recommendation for purchase and my Tankenstein seal of approval. It's a damn shame that the NF-5A is in the French air tech tree for the simple fact that it won't be seen nearly as much as more mainstream tech trees like with the US or Russian tech trees, and as such, I can see the NF-5A being the ultimate hidden gem of the Leviathan's major update. It's incredibly good, but it's in the French air tech tree, so a lot of people will unfortunately never even know how good it really is, but I guess that might help to keep its BR down, so I guess there's always a silver lining. Now with that said, thanks so much for watching. If you don't mind, please consider liking this video and commenting on it. Let me know what you guys think about the NF-5A and also of course on this review. And also if you don't mind, please consider subscribing. As I said before, it helps me out tremendously, and if you want to see more content, that's the best way to do it. Either way, thanks again, and I'll see you all on the other side. Take care, everyone.